there's a bunch of different methodologies that you can use to value a business. And I'm going to explain them in layperson's terms. The first one is what we call a discounted cash flow methodology. That basically says, it looks at your cash flow and your profits, and it says, what am I making this year, next year, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years into the future, okay? And then we discount that back using things like what we call a discount rate, okay? So we all know that 100 Rand in 10 years' time is worth less than 100 Rand today, okay? So we work that back as a discounted cash flow. Now, discounted cash flow tends to rely heavily on what your growth factors are into the future, okay? So that's one method of valuing, and a discounted cash flow tends to be the owner of a business, what is their business worth, okay? And that kind of often is quite ambitious, okay? Because we all want to grow our businesses at 25% a year. So that's very heavily on your, weighs very heavily on your growth forecast. Then you have what we call an earnings multiple. Now, an earnings multiple looks at your current year profits, and it compares it to similar businesses, similar sized businesses, and what are those worth. It doesn't really focus too much on what your future earnings potential is. It looks at where you're at now, okay? So what are you worth now? And then the third one is what, very old school, most will say, what's your net asset value? What are all your assets, okay? So if you're valuing a house that you live in, it's like, what's the selling price of the house, okay, which is an asset, less what your bond is on the house. That's kind of what your net value is on a house. And it's the same in a business. If you had to shut down the business, what could you sell all your equipment, all your assets for, pay off all your loans, and what would be left? And all three of those have kind of different uses. So if you're selling your business, you would tend to want to kind of rely on your discounted cash flow to say, hey, this is what it's worth, this is the potential. Okay, like when you're selling a house, you might list it at a higher price because all your memories are there and what have you. If you're buying a business, you might want to kind of focus more on an earnings multiple, okay? Because you're like, I'm not going to overpay for this business, I'm going to pay what it's worth now. Any future growth is because I, the buyer, am kind of investing and putting that in. So why should I pay you for that? And a net asset value might be, sometimes businesses fail. Sometimes they're not making money. Sometimes the best course of action is actually to say, hey, let's shut this business down, sell everything, and go try something else. And those three answers, okay, give you that range. So it then comes down to intent. What is your intent? If you're trying to raise money to fund growth, you're going to use the discounted cash flow. You're going to convince investors to back you because you're going to be the one who's going to be able to achieve those growth rates. That's very much the venture capital world. If you want to buy a business, something different. So those are, I think those are just some of the different kind of valuation points. At the end of the day, though, it comes down to willing buyer, willing seller. Okay, you can have built a great business. If nobody wants to buy it, unfortunately, it's not worth selling, okay? And sometimes people don't sell business. Sometimes it's producing profits, but they can't find a buyer. Maybe there's nobody with big enough checkbook or big enough pockets to be able to buy that business. Sometimes people hold on to businesses and they say, that's how a lot of family businesses run. It gets passed down to the next generation. It never gets sold, but it produces an income, year in and year out. Obviously that business is worth money. It's worth something. But you don't always have to sell, so that's also the trade-off. Do you want to sell and, cash out and get a value for your business now? Or are you wanting to just have a steady income stream from the business into the future? So those are all the factors, I guess, that you need to consider. Sometimes people get massive valuations, even when there's nothing that underpins that. Sometimes a competitor might want to buy your business for a large amount of money, because it's cheaper for them to do that than to build their business to a point that they can actually compete with you. So those you're never going to get out of a valuation. And that's another part where it's the art side. If somebody comes and your little business that's turning over R1 million a month, somebody offers you 100 million Rand for that. Just because they might see you as a strategic or whatever, it might be a good point to actually sell. So. Those are those are sort of the edge cases, but they do happen, and I think it's very hard to kind of put that onto a spreadsheet.